and welcome back to Saturday Night Chit Chat. And man, I'm super happy to have this cat on. I mean, one of the busiest, I would say, through his whole career, and I'm sure, hopefully, currently, we'll talk about that here in a minute. Played with everybody, obviously, his group Tea Leaf Green, Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, my favorite, Electric Beethoven, which I want to definitely talk about, Marco Benevento Trio, Seven Walkers, the list just goes on and on. Everybody here on Saturday Night Chit Chat, give it up for Mr. Reed Mathis. How you doing, Mr. Reed?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You were telling me right before we jumped on that you're getting ready to hop off the not out of the country, but out of the, I guess, off the mainland here, right? In a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah. Going to Hawaii always kind of feels like going to another country for me. Just the ocean, just like
sure.
The actual physical reality of being over the ocean is
no doubt.
So dramatic that it honestly feels like leaving the planet almost for me. I mean, I haven't left this continent very many times, so it's always like shocking to be over the ocean like that.
Have you? That's a good question. I mean, I got all kinds of stuff on asking, but since you brought it up, you mentioned Hawaii and being on. Now, have you done any touring, like in Europe or down south or in Canada or any places?
Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey went to Europe, I don't know, 5 or 6 times.
Okay, got it.
And a couple of those were like longer tours.
Yeah.
And some of them were just like strategic festival hits,
Sure.
And South America, we did
nice.
Couple times. Brazil. And that was all like 15 years ago. So like,
right.
Not for a while. I mean, after I joined Tea Leaf Green, I think we went to Amsterdam for one show maybe.
Right.
But then I've been to Hawaii 4 times. This will be my 4th time.
And is there a reason why is there like a festival you're always playing there like a lot?
Well, Bill Kreutzmann, the drummer
from
the Grateful Dead, lives on Kauai.
Okay, got it.
So, sometimes seems like maybe about once a year.
Yeah.
He sort of like throws a party on Kauai and flies out musicians, and we hang out for a week and come up with some kind of set list and
that's a
fuck
cool
around,
Wow,
and just play on the beach, and have a really chill, he's earned it at that age.
Sure.
It's like, fuck yeah, live in paradise, fly out, hang, whoever the fuck you're curious about, and just fuck around, and no consequences, no pressure, you're like off the record,
right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the beautiful thing about those Grateful Dead guys. Like they never got any showbiz molecules into their recipe. Like they're not. You're always off the record. Like you're always just having fun when you're in the music. Like they're. I don't know. It's like all their fans take their music so seriously and literally, almost like fundamentalists.
Right.
Like literal interpretation of this shit. And the musicians themselves are remarkably casual about what they're playing and how they're playing and what the tempo and the feel and how many times this goes and how many times that goes and when we do that and
Well, let me ask you this, and you're kind of leading. I'm like the road we're going, and we'll get into the questions I had prepared. But let me, you being kind of generally from kind of a jazz background predominantly. That's definitely what a lot of stuff you're trained in. How did you where do you think that segue kind of happened to where you kind of got into that world that you're talking about right now? I mean, do you think there's already common ground there to begin with, or what do you think how do you think that happened? In your opinion.
I know exactly how it happened, actually.
Okay.
But it was very gradual. But I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Right.
And when I was 18 or 19, I met this guitarist who was one of the best musicians ever to come from Oklahoma, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This older dude named Steve Pryor, and he kind of started mentoring me. I played in his band for a few years, and he had started touring in the late 70s, and for a minute in the 80s he had a serious fucking agent and management and record deal and a bunch of fucking you know, air in his sail, and he fucked
Right.
it up with addiction, you know. But but he had all these relationships still from that time in his life.
Sure.
So he introduced me to a ton of musicians, and when all these musicians, when they would come through Oklahoma, would hit him up. And so he introduced me to Steve Kimmock,
Okay.
who I had not heard of, you know.
Yeah. Sure.
And then, you know,
This is still in Oklahoma. Like you met him in Oklahoma still? Okay.
I met him in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is like an hour from Tulsa.
Okay, got it.
And Kimmock used to play there all the time. So, yeah, we just kind of got a little friendly, you know, got to know each other a little bit, and then, you know, and then Kimmock started calling me to play gigs with him when he was in that area.
Oh, nice.
And then like, oh, you should play a tour with me and actually learn all my music and shit.
Yeah.
And then when I was doing that tour, our driver, the guy that was driving, he's like a renowned Grateful Dead like scholar, archivist.
Sure, yeah.
Cat, like you know, Rain Man style recall of stats and dates and what have you, you know. And so he was driving, and that's all he played, you know, in the front of the thing. So, you know, I was sort of like,
Just kind of
I don't know, I'd never been into that music, you know, that much. In Oklahoma, there wasn't a scene to be into. Like, it wasn't like that, you know. I mean, all the peers I knew listened to hip hop, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Like, there just wasn't that kind of energy around where I was hanging out.
Yeah.
But so I was like, well, now's my chance. Like, I was like, dude, just play me the hippest Dead shit. Like, I want, like, give me the fucking, if you had to pick one recording, like, you know what I mean? Just like, I'm teeing you up, like, knock me out. What do you got?
Right.
And he gave me a live show, and on CD, you know, some awesome recording and well, here, just listen to this. Go when you're in your bunk, you know, like, put on some headphones and listen to this shit.
Yeah.
And I did, and I was like, God damn it, if that's not fucking incredible. Like, I was blown away. And it was not like what I'd kind of gleaned from a distance for 10 years, you know.
Sure, right.
I thought I knew what the music was about.
Yeah.
And then I heard this really good recording of them when they were young, and just was like, Jesus Christ, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
And I was like, is there more like that? And he said, there's some. And I was like, dude, give me that shit. You know, and then a few years later, I did a gig with Paige McConnell.
Yeah.
And Russell Batiste.
Yeah.
And Papa Molly.
Yeah.
And we played as a quartet, and I had never met Papa Molly before.
Yeah.
And he was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And we hit it off. That was just a really fun, it was like right after Katrina, so we were like raising money for New Orleans public schools to repurchase instruments.
Right.
You know, because all their instruments got trashed.
Yeah.
And I mean, if public schools didn't have instruments, I wouldn't be sitting here. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Of course.
my family couldn't buy me instruments. You know.
Yeah.
So Papa Molly called me up after that and was like, "Hey, do you want to do some gigs? Do you want to do a tour?" And I was like, "Sure." And he didn't tell me that Bill Kreutzmann was the drummer on the tour. And then, I didn't even realize right away.
This was what ended up being Seven Walkers, correct? Yeah. Got it. Okay.
And we did like one little run, and I just was like, felt like we were cut from the same cloth, man. I was just like, dude, this guy is like, honestly, in a way, it was the first time I ever felt sort of like acceptable in any setting that wasn't like me and my boys, you know, like I always felt fine about because my style's kind of weird, you know, and you know, I'm not necessarily a good example of choices on the instrument, you know, but I am what I am, and I'm down with it. But there, you know, sometimes, especially playing with older musicians, I would be like a little self-conscious, like,
of course,
like I don't want to inhibit them by
being
like, I want to be myself, but not at the expense, especially at the expense of my elders. You know? So in that situation, I would always kind of tuck it in a little bit, you know. But with Bill, I just felt like, this dude doesn't want that version of me. This dude wants the raw. He wants the fun version. He wants he's like, play whatever is fun for you. That's like, that's the indispensable ingredient for them, you know, even though they're into studying and tradition and going deep on styles and lineages and shit. But then when you're actually holding your instrument, it's like, just play whatever is fun. And that's how I've always been. So we just fucking hit it off, man.
That's
so
incredible.
Beautiful.
That's
and then
neat
after
about
Seven Walkers, I stopped playing with Seven Walkers after a couple years. I was in too many bands. But then a few years later, he hit me up again to do another band.
Oh,
so
nice.
then we did Billy and the Kids.
Yeah.
Which is what we're doing this weekend.
Oh, very cool.
Or
That's
next
amazing.
weekend or something.
Right. That's incredible. It's funny you mentioned Pop O'Malley. One of the first times, I don't think it was the first time, but one of the earlier times that I played South by Southwest, which is probably like 2010, 2011, we played either right before or right after Pop O'Malley. And then one of his singers, when he did more he was doing kind of more very funk oriented stuff there, a guy named Bevis Griffin, who also lives in Austin, Texas. I ended up working with. He kind of did some management stuff for me for a few years. So little small world, as we all know the music world is. So, but yeah, and I think Bernie was at that show. Bernie Worrell was doing it. He was doing the Woo Warriors, and I think he sat in with Pop O'Malley at that show too. It was like kind of one of those you know how South by Southwest is. It was
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So one of those.
Oh, did you play with Bernie? Did you get to play with Bernie much?
Yeah, quite a bit. She stayed at my house for a couple of weeks and did an album with me, which was like,
oh shit, fuck yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, I still think about, like, I remember she wasn't with my wife yet, but it was, we were living together, and I'm like, Bernie freaking Worrell's downstairs sleeping in my basement right now. It was like freaking me out.
Yeah, dude.
It was amazing. But I mean, you met Bernie before, I'm sure, right? Yeah, I mean, you know, he was just an inspiration to be around, and he taught me so much about music.
Did he strike you as being almost like an angel on the earth?
Yeah, big time.
Like a fully benevolent spirit. Like, you know what I mean? I was just like, this is like literally the sweetest, gentlest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, man, what a cat to be in a band with. When I was growing up and listening to P-Funk, I just did not picture that kind of energy coming off of a core band member, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I always thought about Bootsy and George Clinton, you know, and their large presences, you know?
Sure.
And I just didn't even think about it, but Bernie was like,
oh yeah,
like almost like you could see a halo over his head.
Yeah.
You know, like, fuck. And then he would sit down and play like Mozart or something and just like break your heart, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing how many people know. You mentioned Funkadelic and the P-Funk stuff. It's amazing how many people know him more from the Talking Head stuff than they do the P-Funk stuff, you know? So obviously he was created a whole nother, not persona, but just definitely, you know, a whole nother thing over there too as well. So great stuff.
I think he could have joined any band at any time and found an appropriate I didn't even know he was part of the Talking Heads for like at all growing up, for sure. I mean, honestly, until like after I'd met him, I think.
Right.
Jacob Fred opened for the Woo Warriors in like 2000, I think, or 2001. We did a tour opening for them when Jen Durkin was singing. Oh, and,
that's right. Yeah.
And the drummer's name was just like G.
Yeah.
And he was like amazing.
Yeah, totally. I know.
Yeah, man. Beautiful.
Yeah, he was a beautiful person. Great spirit too. Incredible. Yeah. So, well, let me ask you this, and this is usually my first question, but we had so much cool stuff to talk about.
Don't let me like run.
No, that's what this is all about. It's two-sided for sure. So, but what have you been? You know, I always ask this with everybody that's been on the show because that's kind of what the show was launched out of. What you know, what have you been doing? You know, since last March or whatever to keep your creativity and your personal, you know, like to keep your mind and your music working.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the question of the moment. I mean, I bet it's like we all have an adventure story to tell now of some sort, you know, and like it's cool how the whole culture, I mean, obviously, you know, awful things happened, but the whole culture was given an opportunity and invited to sort of go within and like shut it down, fucking check it out and see where you're at and kind of take stock. We all got a minute to fucking breathe. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I felt panic right away as a, like, professionally. I was sort of like, I just not panic, but like that raw feeling of like when you literally don't know what's about to happen. Yeah. You know, almost like when you're hydroplaning or something in a vehicle. You're just like, this could go any way right now. Yeah. You know? And man, I just got goosebumps even just saying
Yeah,
that. It was like such a feeling, you know.
Yeah.
But also it was this
that
massive
first
relief.
month, especially like that March, April was just. I mean, it's still weird now, but like that was very like exactly. The hydroplane is a perfect analogy. I mean, it felt like that for about 3 weeks, and when you kept seeing little things cancel, like, is this going to get canceled? Is this, like using that as the barometer for other things, whether it be Jazz Fest or South. We mentioned South by Southwest. I mean, like,
it was like dominoes falling.
Yeah.
That second or third week of March, it was just like boom. Every few hours, another text, another email. Like, wow. It was just like, it was honestly like kind of thrilling in a masochistic way to just be like, to just see so much work.
Yeah.
Some of my Jazz Fest shit we had been working on for 6 months to make happen. It was like, it was like, it was exhilarating in a not pleasurable way. To just see it all go, woof, there it goes. It was like when somebody dies and you're like, they're just gone. They're just not there.
Yeah.
Just wrenched out of the picture. But anyway, I first thing I did was quit drinking.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been awesome. That's been 13 months and
good. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Insane difference on so many levels.
Oh yeah.
So that's cool. On the road, it's like so useful and it's free most of the time, and it's just sort of like, it's so reliable. You know, I mean, that's where addiction comes from. I think in some people, like if you have a trauma background and you sort of are tolerating a low level of psychic discomfort at all times, and then you find this thing that sort of it works. When you take Advil, it works. Your headache goes away. Drink a bunch of whiskey and it fucking does the thing, and it's like reliable. So hard to stop on the road. So I was like, fuck yeah, now's my chance. And that was awesome. And then I just got fucking busy, dude. I have produced 10 albums in the last year that are coming out over the next 6 months with different projects, and a documentary.
Wow.
I made a documentary about my first band, Fred Fred Jazz Odyssey, which I was in for 15 years. Yeah. And I quit that band, and when I quit, it wasn't cool. It wasn't a cool divorce. It was a bad, bloody divorce,
I'm sorry.
And we're all good now,
Yeah.
But for 10 years, I didn't open those bins, in my storage unit. It was just like, I know that shit's in there. It was like,
Yeah.
But then I was like, I'm gonna check out what I got.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I had in there, and I was like, Jesus Christ. So I digitized all this shit and made just told my version of the story, and then luckily the other guys.
Did you do all the editing and all that kind of stuff, or have people help you with the editing and everything? Oh wow.
No. Editing's like my favorite thing to do.
Oh, nice. Are you like Final Cut Pro type stuff?
Yeah, but I mean, even audio editing, like I edit.
Nice. Yeah.
I edit what I'm listening to recreationally. There are very few albums I get into that I don't throw into Ableton and fuck with. It's like part of how I relate to something. When I love it, when I really love some music, I want to involve. So I mean, I have edited versions of all the entire catalogs of great jazz artists, and that I just like, I just make my own version. I make my own box set of my own favorite excerpts in my own order, and whatever, it's just fun. It's a way to get the music inside me instead of looking at it across the street,
Nice.
But like, so anyway, yeah, I love editing. And I put together, when I quit Jacob Fred, we had been making this studio record for a year that was like, dude, it was the culmination of 15 years of fucking work. It was the best fucking art. It was so gorgeous. It was just like we'd finally figured it out. We'd finally gotten out of our way. We'd finally put the, whatever we were overcompensating for, we just put it down, and it was just like, it was just songs and fucking grooves and tones without all the, without all the ego needs that young men, that's so common in young men, especially young men that get very serious about an instrument very young.
Right.
You know, healthy, well-adjusted people don't do that.
Right.
Like, going that deep on a craft as a teenager to the exclusion of the world.
Yeah.
You know, that's the behavior of somebody that's looking to get out of a situation.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
To change their life. That's somebody who's like, I need a different reality.
Yeah.
And you make it through this instrument, you know, and like. So anyway, I ended up with that album and finishing it, because it didn't come out. It was so much my production and my tunes that when I left, even though the album was basically done, they were just like, yeah, let's not put out something that's so Reed oriented now that he's not in the band.
Sure.
So just this fucking gorgeous thing that we were all so proud of has not been released. So I took that out and printed it as stems and took it to a dope studio in Oakland and made a really nice, gorgeous mix of the whole thing. And we're gonna fucking release it. And then I put together 8 hours of live shit that I had we had a sound engineer for several years that like really well recorded every show.
Yeah.
And I had never gone through that shit. And it was like, what the fuck? So I put together a ton of live shit that's all gonna just be online streaming for free, you know.
Right.
And then this documentary. And then there's an Electric Beethoven album that we recorded at Color Red.
Oh, dude. You know, I've sent you private messages how much. I mean, that just really connected with me. And the guy, you know,
I'm so glad.
Oh, it's just. I mean, musically, sonically, it's just like, it just really does. It really connects. I'm not just. I mean, everybody I play it for, they're just like, whoa. Especially that version of the ninth you guys do. It's,
right on, man.
Yeah. Just,
I mean, the tones in there, like you've recorded in there, like,
oh, I love it.
Like, how did you use the tape machine and shit? And
everything, and recorded, and it was, you know, everything live, you know, as I'm sure it was with you, and then
hell yeah,
you know, just the mics shoved up to my, I mean, just, you know, Eddie's like, I actually texted Eddie the other day, and besides myself, he's like the only person that I trust mixing my bass and tones. He's just got such great ears.
Oh my God, 100%, bro, 100%. He put 3 mics on the kit, you know. Yeah. And just like, and we're all like 3 feet from each other, and I mean, we overdubbed after we got good takes, you know. Like our drummer would overdub like on a pad with like.
Sure.
You know, all the songs have like an acoustic drum set and then like sampled shit played on top of it. Right. You know, and shit like that. We would overdub other synths, you know, or something, you know, but. All the rhythm section shit's live.
But you actually, when we were Ray, didn't you guys? I don't mean to interrupt you, but didn't, like, I know that the recording was with Color Red, but you had done some Electric Beethoven stuff before Color Red too, didn't you? I thought I remember at least live stuff, right? I thought I'd read about it before that.
I made a record. I made a record of all Beethoven shit, but it wasn't an ensemble yet. It was like a full-on studio.
Oh, got it.
Fucking
okay.
Thing. So like I did the 3rd Symphony and the 6th Symphony, Beethoven's 3rd Symphony, Beethoven's 6th Symphony, but every movement I put together a different trio.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, you know, I did like Joe Russo and Mike Gordon and me on one movement, and then the next movement was with Marco Benevento and Matt Chamberlain, and then the next one was with Robert Walter and Stanton Moore. It was sort of like casting a play. It was sort of like whose traits will fit which. You know, because Beethoven sort of was the initiator of like narrative instrumental music, like what we now call soundtrack music. Right. You know, before him, European music was like church shit. Right. You know, and like rich people shit. It was like rituals, you know, and like corny dance shit that was like bubblegum emotions, you know. And he was. You know, he was the weirdo who created narrative instrumental music, basically. Yeah. And so, you know, so each movement is definitely like a chapter in a novel, you know. So it was so fun to be like, ooh, you know I got one that's perfect for you, dude, you know.
Right.
And everybody I hit up was down, and you know, it was it was awesome. But there were no gigs. I couldn't get any of I couldn't afford to get any of those guys to do gigs anyway. I mean,
sure.
You know, it was like, studio's one thing, but having people fly around and shit, it's like, I can't hire people to do that shit. Yeah. So like, you know, so I had this record, and then that just honestly sat on the shelf for a long time.
Okay.
And then I was like, I gotta release this fucking thing. I pulled it out, and I deleted all my parts from the tracking. So all that was left was the other two guys from each track. Yeah. And I just went into the studio in Oakland and just played bass, like a live bass track, with my soprano rig going at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is like up 2 octaves and through a guitar amp, you know.
Oh, nice.
And that with a volume pedal, so it's not just on, you know. It's like the expressive version of the instrument while the low shit's happening. And I just played along to it like it was fucking karaoke. And then I released that. So it's sort of like an overworked, overthought out studio thing with like a live bass track.
This is all pre the Color Red record, right? This is before you got
right. Yeah, that came out on Marco's label, Royal Potato.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then when that came out, finally, my buddy who was sort of managing me was like, "You got to do gigs," and I was like, "I would love to do gigs," and he was like, "We got to get a band," and I pulled together, you know, homies who I thought could handle it, and we toured it, and it was awesome. And then we released a live record, actually the weekend after Trump was elected. I remember it fucking vividly. We played Cervantes, and recorded it really well. And then later I took excerpts. We played the first movement of the Third Symphony for like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
One of the nights. Like, it was like we were doing really long form versions of those. And I took that, and then I took my favorite orchestral recording of that symphony, which was the Berlin Philharmonic in 1963, you know, like the peak of acoustic recording technology, you know?
Yeah.
And I took that and I put it in Ableton and warped it and edited it to stay in step with our arrangement.
Oh,
you know?
Wow. So
even as we do kind of a rhythm game where when we're vamping.
Yeah.
Where basically like when we drop into a vamp, we know harmonically where we're at. And we know whatever the next section is, what we're going to cue out of. Yeah. So we know where this vamp is supposed to result.
Yeah.
But we don't have a set groove or rolls or even emotional tone necessarily. Yeah. We just know that the next thing is D minor and it's going to do this little loop-de-loop.
Yeah.
So when we get to a vamp, we like start with the simplest version, which is just like the one. Yeah. And then a response to that later in the measure, you know, and then we just.
And are you controlling that on stage? Are you controlling that on stage, or is the drummer, in terms of the Ableton, you know, part of it?
Oh no, we don't use the Ableton shit live.
Oh, okay, got it.
We're just. Okay. I did that after I'd mixed us. I'd mixed our live shit. Got it. And then I like, you know, overlaid the symphony recording onto our live shit, following us. So like Beethoven would one of his signature moves is like flipping from 4/4 to 6/8 and back.
Sure.
With keeping the same chords or the same melody, but it just like it's like a polarity switch, you know. He just flips into triplet and then he flips out of it. Yeah. And we would be doing that shit, but not in his pattern. We would just be on the fly doing it. Yeah. But then I had the orchestra doing both, so I would edit it so that when we're in 6/8, the orchestra's in 6/8, and then I just cut up the orchestra shit to follow exactly what we'd done. And that came out, that was called Maps We Found in the Ground. And that came out on Marco's label too.
Oh, nice.
And then we did the Color Red shit. Eddie saw, we were on a festival on the same stage as New Master Sounds. And Eddie like watched our whole set like up close, and he was just like, man, I'm starting a label. You know, our first time in Color Red, they didn't have of the lights, or it was like under construction still.
Yeah.
but fuck, it sounds good in there.
Oh, it is. It's a magical place, man. And just to like, you know, I don't know how it was when you guys went there, but when we did our whole album there, and it, you know, obviously stayed, slept in the house, got up at, you know, whatever, 9 or 10 in the morning, started writing a song, and by like, you know, noon you're rehearsing it, and by 2 o'clock you're recording it, you know, live takes, you know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
it was just like the energy was like, you know, it was great. It was just incredible.
Yeah,
you know?
dude.
Eddie's energy, obviously, Eddie's just got a magical thing. You know, he's got that James Bond thing about him or something where.
Completely.
Yeah.
And you just, like, he's a serious cat, you know? As much fun as he is to be around, when it comes to the craft, he's fucking serious.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that creates an atmosphere where, like, everybody wants to, like, impress him or please him or something. Like, all the musicians get on their best behavior when he's engineering or producing, you know, because you're just like, Eddie's here, y'all. Eddie's here. Did you guys, you know, like, it just brought out, we crushed. I was so proud of us at those Color Red sessions, because live, we go long form. Like, we don't think of these Beethoven things in terms of like we have no problem playing one quote unquote song for half hour.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like when it's time for another groove or another tempo, we just drop into another tempo. Like, we don't have to have a cut up set list to hit a lot of different moods or tempos.
Yeah.
We, especially with Josh Raymer on drums, you know, the kid can't miss. Like, you know, if anything's getting flat or stale, or we can feel, you know, you can feel the room when they're with you, when you're losing them, or when you still have them, but it's just sort of like it's time for something. It's time to try a different position, you know?
Yeah.
And like, you can just look at fucking Raymer and he'll just, it's insane. I mean, he's the best drummer I've ever heard when it comes to dance shit. For what I do, because I'm such a just dumb, like, incorrect, like, I don't play any genres well or accurately, you know, so a lot of dance drummers it's intense for me, because they are nailing something, an aesthetic, or nailing a, you know, in funk music there's so much, people can geek out hard about like eras and regions and different lineages, which I love that shit, but I can't reproduce any of that, you know.
Sure.
And like Raymer, it's just rare to find a dance drummer who is also kind of not literal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And fucking God bless him.
Yeah, that's great, man. Well, let me ask you this. What do you, and again, this is a common question on every one of these shows, and you tour just about as much as anybody does out there. What do you feel like, and this is obviously changing, you know, almost weekly, it feels like anymore, but say this fall 2021, I mean, where do you feel like the live tour? I mean, I know the outside, the festivals, those are kind of coming back, but, you know, more think about, you know, like the 300 to 800 seat venue, you know, to 1,000 seat venue. Like, where do you think things will be in fall of 2021? You think we're still a little ways off past that?
Let's see. So it's like, so like May, June, July, August, September. So like 5 months, 6 months from now?
Yeah, about half a year from now, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, everybody's planning on Jazz Fest happening in October.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going ahead with that.
And they're going full capacity on that, as far as you know?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard that aspect of it yet. I heard they're having it. I just don't know if they're, you know, what kind of things they're going to be putting in place, or if they are at all, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Or like, yeah, because that's really the question.
Right.
If you're going to have socially distanced venues, the only way to do that at a profit is to jack the ticket way up. I mean, Terrapin Crossroads is the venue I play at the most in the Bay Area. Yeah. And they've been doing sporadic shows here and there throughout the last year, and you know, I make the normal amount that I make playing there. Yeah. But they are charging like $200-$300 a head.
Right.
to come in, because it's like very finite seating.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And that's the only way I guess they can make their. I did a couple nights at the Chapel in San Francisco.
Okay.
A month ago, and same thing. It was like fucking people were paying $300. Like that's how hungry people are for live music right now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that is not a sustainable model. And
Right.
I have never been in the part of society that can buy a $300 ticket to fucking anything.
Well, and plus you can understand, for it to be at least semi-normal, you have to get the casual music fan too, not just the hardcore fan.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you know, and part of what makes the lifestyle feel purposeful to me is the sort of take the music to the people attitude of like almost like ministry or something, you know, like we're like people have a right to this music, and like when you charge a lot of money for it, it's just like smart business maybe, but it just like I'm the kind of person that it would exclude if I didn't know the people at the venue and get on the guest list or some shit. I couldn't go to fucking fancy ass shows, and I love music. I need music, you know. Like I don't go see tons of shit because it's expensive, you know. So I definitely don't want to be charging a lot, you know. Right. And I've every manager I've ever had, I've been like, dude, let's charge $1. Like, like fucking Fugazi, you know, like let's undercharge and fill these rooms, you know what I'm saying? Like let's charge $0.10 until the venue's fucking full.
Man, I think the pandemic is really both in music and in this, you know, I have a lot of friends in that, and I'm sure you do too, like in cinema and theater and that side of the arts too. I think a lot of these things were going to kind of happen, but it's just kind of put it on steroids. Like for instance, with the theater, you know, with movies, you know, with streaming coming in, you know, I mean, I think that was an inevitable where we're such an on-demand culture right now where a lot of that stuff was going to happen. It's just that this whole pandemic thing sped it up a lot quicker, you know? So, I mean, I don't think movie theaters are going to go away forever, but I think they're getting to be more almost like buying a vinyl record, maybe with some, you know, there'll be certain things, you know, that type of thing, you know, so.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we're going forward. We're definitely going to be a hybrid culture. Like, some things will resemble before, and some things will never resemble that again. I think, you know, and it's going to be fascinating. In a way, I'm kind of stoked because you know, as music has gotten increasingly, or as some music has gotten increasingly automated, you know, and increasingly AI sourced. You know, I've always been like, well, that does, in a way, someone like me that makes, like, I'm basically the farmer version of a professional musician. Sure. You know, like the local farmer version. You know, like in a way that I could see that as a threat, because that kind of music is a lot cheaper to make and makes a lot more profit and a lot more money, and way more people like dancing to music that's generated through some sort of digital, you know, situation. Music made by humans has all the human flaws, and we love things that don't have human flaws. You know, we love shit we can control that won't shock us or scare us or challenge us or take us places we've never been. We want music that takes us back to the place we liked before. You know? But
the most ironic part is all the best digital software, or the more and more it gets more advanced, part of the advancement is it can mimic human flaws. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Especially with music. You know, it used to remember when you know, you try to do everything you could to EQ out any static, and now that's actually like a thing. You know, I mean, it has been for a while now. But you know,
static. You fucking design what kind of static you want.
Right. Yeah. So
which is gorgeous. And you know, Miles Davis in his autobiography talks about how every generation's musicians sound like their environment sonically. He's like in the 30s, you know, all the musicians sounded like trains. And in the 40s, they all sounded like car horns, you know. And Manhattan, you know, and like fucking, you know, screeching brakes and shit. And like, you know, and then like the atomic bomb, you know, creates Jimi Hendrix and all, you know, all the shit, you know, and like, so, you know, now of course, musicians can't help but unconsciously sound like the environment we're in, which is increasingly this weird AI, thing. Like I don't know, man. It's fascinating, but my favorite thing to do is still roll the fucking dice with humans.
Yeah, totally.
And I like it because it's messy and flawed and challenging.
Right.
It fucking gives my life purpose.
Yeah.
And so I in a way, it makes that contrast more stark. The more the culture goes that direction, the more what I am will be easy to understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it'll be so not that.
Yeah.
And that will then be a smaller community, but they will value it all the more.
Yeah.
So that's a long answer to your question of where I think it's going.
No. It's a long, but it's a great question too. I mean, everything has become. I mean, again, that was happening before the pandemic, but I think it's even fragmented even more. Everything's niche. Everything is. And which could be a good thing. It's not like we don't have 3 television stations anymore either. So it's
right.
It's a different world that we're living in. It feels like the playing field is, whether it be you and me or it be Elton John or whatever, we're all doing the same thing. You know what I mean? At this point, or we were at least for the last 6-8 months. So it definitely levels the playing field a lot,
I mean, it was fun watching some like heavy musicians play in their house.
Yeah, I was digging. Yeah.
And I mean, for me, playing alone. I mean, bass isn't an instrument you play alone. Very much, it's really a team instrument,
Sure.
in a lot of ways. Or like, that's one of the best ways to enjoy the bass is with other musicians. Like, you can play it alone and it's fun, like,
sure.
It's not as fun as playing it with other people and like,
Right.
So I played guitar more than I've ever played in my life over the last year because like,
wow.
I don't play guitar at gigs really, and it was just sort of like, it's more self-contained if you're gonna play alone, and like, you can approximate a grand piano easier on a guitar.
Yeah.
As far as like the range and the ability to like cover several bases, like you can cover some low end, but you can also cover some melody and you can fill in some shit here. Like, it's not as easy to do that on a bass. So I ended up playing guitar a shit ton.
That's great.
And that's fucking fun. I totally get why everybody loves guitar so much.
Right.
I'm like, this is fun. I like it.
I saw a great video of you. I can't remember where it was, but we were talking about Eddie earlier, and you were just talking about, I think, his right hand, his rhythm hand.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've completely copped his rhythm hand.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
His rhythm hand is like a tambourine. Like when the fucking tambourine gets going, it's like, and he also plays a mean tambourine.
I know he does. He's a bad. I've seen him do it. Yeah.
But his right hand, man, it doesn't matter whether he's soloing or in the rhythm section or whatever. Is that thing is, it's fucking relentless and ridiculous, and it doesn't cause the stance of his character on the instrument to become rigid.
Right.
He still sounds loose and flowing and risky and all that shit, but just the mechanics of his right hand in that pick is like, I've completely copped it on the bass, especially with dance shit. Like for me, I played bass for 20 years with never using a pick.
Yeah.
And for some weird reason, I was almost like against it when I was younger. Like,
yeah, I'm right there with you. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just or not against it, but I wore it as a badge of pride. Right. For some, I don't know where I got that. I don't know. I guess that was in the air at that time.
Sure.
But, after I got to know Mike Gordon a little bit, we had this one night where I went to his house in Vermont, and he had a newborn, and the baby and his wife went to bed like crazy early.
Yeah.
So we had like all night to hang, it felt like. So we went down to the basement and got all of his fucking instruments out. Like all of his instruments. He has like 35 basses or something.
I know.
And we just hung out and like drank coffee and handed basses back and forth, and he was like telling me where he got shit, and and watching him play up close, you know, like with the pick, I was just like, I had just kind of met Eddie and my brain sort of made some connection between Mike's like upstroke vibe.
Yeah.
You know, he like leans on the upstroke. It's the opposite of like Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And I was just watching that, and then when I combined that with the fucking, you know, binary relentless thing that Eddie Roberts does, I was just like, holy shit, this is like, I don't know. I felt like I got a new instrument just by adding a pick to it.
Yeah. Well, you watch, you know, some videos of Carol Kay playing too, and she's got that kind of leans on the upstroke a little. You know, some of her stylistically, you know, and her phrasing. I mean, Mike and her are a lot different, but I mean, they've got it. They kind of weave in and out the same kind of way when you watch her play. You know what I mean?
And they both. I see some similarities in those two. You know, they both play very purposeful. Like there's not a lot of ghost notes.
Right.
You know, it's like real this note, that note, capital. You know.
Yeah.
And and they both kind of use the tenor zone in a similar way.
Yeah.
You know, like, is that Carol Kay on that one Simon and Garfunkel song, America?
I don't know if she's on that track or not. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's probably about.
Because that's like Wrecking Crew kind of
right.
music, like. The bass shit on there, that's like, it's totally what you would write for a cello. It's like all in that tenor register. It's a counter melody to the vocal, and oh man, fucking love that shit. That's gotta be her.
Let's kind of wrap up. I could talk to you all night long, man. We could go and go. Let's what I know you mentioned about the documentary that's coming out, and then also the new album too from Jacob Jab Fred Odyssey. As any other things we can kind of keep an eye out on?
I'm about to release my first Color Red full length, because all I've done is singles so far.
Oh,
so
okay.
We're releasing.
That says Electric Beethoven, or is that Reed Mathis? Oh, okay, got it.
It's Electric Beethoven, and we recorded it all at Color Red, but during the pandemic, I sent each track to a different producer, DJ person.
Oh, cool.
And was like, have your way with it. Send me whatever you fucking want. And so now we're releasing it as a double vinyl, where the first record is us in the Color Red basement, and the second record is same tracks, same track list, but remixed.
Oh, super excited about that. That's awesome.
So that's dope. I'm super stoked on that. And then I recorded a record of all like songs where I sing, telling a story. I got divorced a few years ago, and like wrote all the right before that happened. I kind of wrote a song cycle that was like exploring what was happening in a sort of narrative way, and I was like, I'm gonna write songs that I'm gonna get my lyrics from our actual conversations. So the whole record is literally like a transcript, edited, you know, obviously, you know, I mean, it's lyrics, but I recorded that as like a thing, and like sent those tracks around, so all my homies like overdubbed on it, and so I have that's gonna come out. And then
when is the Electric Beethoven thing coming out? I mean, you got a ballpark on that yet, or have they set a date yet?
Well, they were talking about late July.
Okay.
But I also just got word that like some of like vinyl, like the vinyl company maybe is a little backed up.
Oh, sure.
So might be, I don't know. It hasn't been set. Or
probably
like
late summer-ish, something like that. Yeah.
Late summer, and then you know, hopefully we can do some fucking playing. You know.
Yeah, of
in
course.
The fall. I mean, I miss those boys.
Yep. That's a magic question. Well, man, I can't thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, dude, I mean, again, like I said, we could go sit there and talk bass talk all night long, and upstrokes and downstroke, and pick or not pick, double thumb, not the double thumb. I mean, I'm definitely down all of that. And it's super exciting, man, from watching from the outside, it's super exciting, you know, as a bass player, and as a songwriter. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of the bass players I have on the show, it's of course they're great players, but it ultimately always goes back to the song. I mean, those are the bass players that I'm drawn to. I mean, I love getting fancy and crazy and all that kind of stuff. That's all great stuff, but you know, what drew me to the bass was, you know, Papa Was a Rolling Stone is my favorite bass line, and it's got 3 notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not, you know, and that's, you know, if I write a song like that, I'm good for the rest forever. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. So it's always that songwriting approach to stuff, and that's what gets me really inspired. And you are definitely one of those people. So I appreciate you taking a little time out to share some of your inspiration.
Likewise,
everything, man. Yeah, and safe travels. You're leaving like in the next couple days, you said?
I'm leaving in like 12 hours, I think.
Wow.
Something like that.
That's gonna be great, man. Well, so cool. Well, Reed, well, thanks so much. Stay in touch. I can't wait to hear see everything that you're doing. And again, thanks for being on the show, brother. All right. Safe travels. See you soon.